Hey Ed, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's so glad to have you all over here at my house for good lunch and good meeting.
Ed, you were active in the Fat Stock Show from the very beginning with your father, no?
Yeah, we showed cattle back when I was in high school. Obviously, back in the late '60s or early '60s, when my dad had a bull named King that was never defeated in the show ring, and we had a great time at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. And then, of course, down at the Coliseum, we moved over to the Reliance Center where they rodeo at the NRG Center where the rodeo is now.
Uh-huh. And so there were a lot of early members of the rodeo committees that you worked with. And tell me some of the characters. How about Lewis Pierce?
Oh, Lewis Pierce, we called him LP, was kind of Mr. Rodeo. He was instrumental in doing a lot of things as a rodeo. One of the things he was most interested in was moving from the Coliseum to the Astrodome with Stuart Lang. And Lewis and I have been good friends for a long time, and he did a lot for the rodeo. Of course, he went to the University of Texas, and everything at Texas is orange and white. So obviously, when he took over as president of the rodeo, everything was orange and white, and it's still there today. But LP was a great guy with the rodeo, did a lot for the rodeo. But of course, we've had a lot of good people follow Lewis and make the rodeo what it is today with our 30,000 volunteers and over 100 committees. And we do a lot of good for a lot of people.
You sure do. Tell me the origin or the beginning of the art contest. How did that come about?
Well, so they were talking to us one time, I can't remember, I was at the school art meeting, and they wanted to have an auction. And I said, well, I'll tell you what we ought to do. We ought to have it at River Oaks Country Club. And they said, what, River Oaks Country Club? How do you get in there? I said, well, I can take care of that. So we had our first two auctions at River Oaks Country Club, and I can't remember the amount of money, but it was the two auctions set up the stage of where we see it today, where the auction brings in over $1 million of sales now at the rodeo. So it was something that we started years ago, and it has become now one of the most profitable ventures of the rodeo.
Ed, I know you attended Lamar High School. Was that a good precursor for the rodeo?
Well, back when you went to Lamar, of course, everybody kind of dressed up and was, River Oaks. A lot of River Oaks girls and guys went there. And of course, I was in the FFA, and I drove a pickup truck. And I was one of the few people back then that had a pickup truck. Of course, now everybody drives pickup trucks. But I'd park my truck there and just had a lot of fun. And the main thing with my truck was the Coralettes, who were the singing girls at Lamar. Lee Keating called me and asked me if I could use his truck to move the risers to some hotel where the Coralettes could stand and sing. So over a period of a couple of years, I did that. And I guess the neatest thing about the Coralettes, they made me an honorary Coralette in front of about 500 people at the Lamar High School when the Coralettes were singing at Christmas, which was kind of a nice honor. And I don't know if anybody's been an honorary Coralette since then at Lamar. But anyway, at Lamar, we had a lot of fun. We had our first FFA show on the front of Lamar High School, and it was quite of a show. People couldn't believe that here was a tent set up in front of Lamar High School at the end of River Oaks Boulevard with pigs and chickens and cows and steers walking around down the front of Lamar High School. And the funniest part of this whole thing was there was a guy that lived on River Oaks Boulevard, bought a lamb, and walked home with the lamb down River Oaks Boulevard, which I'll never forget.
Hey Ed, aside from LP, I saw where he and Buddy Bray welcomed Elvis into the rodeo in the 70s. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I was in the background. I wasn't that close. They wouldn't let you get that close, but I remember that very well when we had Elvis there. I mean, the crowd was just going crazy. The security was unbelievable. But, I didn't get close enough. I could see him, and I saw Lewis, and I've got a great picture of that, by the way, too, of Lewis and Elvis together. But Elvis was very cordial. He went around and shook hands with everybody in the little circle. He didn't go out because the police were, how the police were back then protecting him from everybody, and the crowd was screaming. But it was amazing deal to meet Elvis. Fortunately, I've been able to meet quite a few other people, maybe not like Elvis, but President Bush came to the rodeo, and we got to visit with him. And in fact, I had a picture made with him. He and my dad were in the same type of business together, drilling business. And he remembered me, and he said, "Come over here, Ed, let's have a picture made." And I've got that picture, which I can show you later, of me and the president. He loved the rodeo, and so did Barbara. And then they came out quite a few times. And when people knew that he was coming, the crowd was full of 70,000 people there, always standing up and cheering him for 15, 20 minutes because, you know, native Houstonian and the president's quite a deal. But anyway, the president loved the rodeo, and we've had a lot of celebrities come to the rodeo and have appearances at the rodeo. They've been great friends to have them, and unfortunately, I've been able to meet some of them.
Yeah, I remember the one photograph of you with John Wayne.
That's a long time ago. There was a man named O.J. McCullough, owned McCullough Tool Company, and he was one of the sponsors or underwriters of the Alamo. And when I was a friend of the son, John Mike McCullough, and when they invited Mr. McCullough to come to San Antonio for the premiere, John Mike asked me if I'd like to go. And I said, well, sure. So we went up there and saw the premiere of the Alamo, and I had my picture made with John Wayne, and he autographed my book.
One last, what about Glenn McCarthy? He's a little before your time.
Well, yeah, a little bit, but you know, I still remember going to the Shamrock. He had the place over there called the Cork Club, and my dad was a member of the Cork Club, and before the Shamrock sold, we used to go to the Cork Club, and we even swam in the pool a couple of times back, you know, in high school. But I remember going to the different events at the Shamrock. You'd always go to those elevators, and you'd see the great picture of Glenn McCarthy there, kind of like, welcome to the Shamrock Hotel. He was a great guy. You know, another person that made Houston notoriety for different things. Glenn McCarthy was one of those people.
Do you remember someone named Bunny Orsak?
Very well.
And she was a member of on the chicken committee?
Yeah, she worked for Channel 13, and she was Catering. And I remember her very well. She used to put the little hat on in our chicken committee skits, and she'd dance around, and she was really a fun lady. I knew Bunny real well, and anyway, she was really a neat person.
Ed, you just recognized Sonny Luck as one of the Poultry Committee gentlemen?
Yeah, Sonny had a Sonny Luck Steakhouse on Westheimer many years ago, and he loved the rodeo, and he'd come out to the rodeo. But Sonny always had the one story about he had this horse out in front, a white horse, and he had a guy dressed up like a knight. And somebody got out there one night and knocked the guy off the horse and got on the horse and rode it around the parking lot. And Sonny went out there, Sonny trying to catch the guy on his horse. I'll never forget that story.
Ed, I know that your dad had an incredible influence on you. And so one of the things you've told me about the way he would split his day. Now, what did he say?
Sleep 8, play 8, and work 8. But try not to jam them all in the same 8. And that's kind of, I've always tried to remember that. And he taught me a lot. And he loved to entertain and loved to cook. That's where I learned to cook from him. And one of the great stories I remember when he had the oil convention here in town many years ago, and he invited, I can't remember his name, Ken Jameson, who was chairman of Humble, Wayne Glenn, who was chairman of Conoco, and several other people over for dinner. And the first thing, when they came into my house, my dad said, take those damn ties off. We're going to have a good steak dinner here tonight, and we're going to have some drinks and have a good time. But anyway, I was small then, and my dad was out there cooking. Of course, we raised our own beef back then. He was out there cooking these big 16-ounce ribeyes, corn on the cob, green beans with almondines on it, his favorite meal. And here's the chairman of Exxon and chairman of Conoco sitting down at the table eating all this great food. They said, Don, we've never had a meal like this, and we've been all over the world. So, you know, he was really happy to have those powerful people over having a home-cooked meal, cooking steak dinner for them.
Yeah. You do the same thing with your friends.
Yeah, I love to cook. I picked up cooking from my dad, and I've had a lot of friends I've cooked for. We've cook for, we used to have a catering company. And then I guess the most fun person we got to meet was Farrah Fawcett. Farrah was making a movie here in Houston, and she was down at what ranch, I can't remember. But anyway, Ed Dozier and I went down there and we cooked our signature prime ribeyes, green beans almondine, and the new potatoes, and best pecan pies and lemon pies. And Farrah said, "Where'd you get this pecan pie?" And I said, "This lady right over here made it." She went over and gave her a big hug. But those pecan pies people really enjoyed all those. But that's years ago. And we catered a lot of people. The biggest party we catered was for about 5,000 people at the Astrodome when the home show was here. And Ed and I got the group together and set up 10 lines and served them people. People never had a meal with that prime rib like that, cut right off the pit. We had the pits there in the Astro Hall. Another one we used to do was Gilman Pontiac. When they'd introduce their new cars, Ramsey would always say, "Come on over here and bring all that good food, and let's have plenty of whiskey and drinks." And the people knew that they were coming to a party, and he'd have 400 or 500 people show up to see his new cars and eat all that good food. I love to cook and have a good time doing it all. You get to meet a lot of people. My dad always said anybody can take you out to dinner, but very few people will have you over for dinner.
Ed, I wanted to know the story or hear it again about when your dad was in the middle of a nice sleep and got a phone call from the White House. Was that it?
Yeah, and the phone rang. They said, "This is the White House. We'd like to speak to Mr. Don McMahon." What? And they said, "Yes, the White House." So my mother had the phone over here, and my dad said, "Don, you better get up. They said the White House is on the phone for you." So my dad jumps out of bed and walks around to the phone. "Hello, it's Don McMahon." And I forget the guy's name. He said, "This is so-and-so with Gerald Ford, and we understand that you have the most scientific or updated drilling rig in the Gulf." This is during the oil crisis. He said, "The president's going to be in New Orleans, and we'd like to know if the president could come out and maybe have lunch with you on the rig and visit with the people." My dad said, "What?" Yeah, I said, "Our staff will get with you, but we just wanted to be sure that it was okay with you since you're the chairman of the company, that Gerald Ford, the president, would love to come out and see you and the crew and have some good Louisiana food," or whatever. I don't know what on. My dad said, "We'd love to have him." He said, "Well, anyway, sorry to bother you, Mr. McMahon, but our staff will be in touch with you, and good night." My dad didn't even go back to sleep. He called the president of the company and said, "Hey, get the rig shine, get extra crews out there. I'm talking about in the morning, and get this thing looking right. We've got the president coming. New uniforms, new hats, new whatever, they can make that place shine." They had about a week or 2 weeks to get it done. So anyway, lo and behold, everybody's out there and getting ready, and here comes a Air Force 2, I guess they call it, or Helicopter 1. And here's the president landing right on my dad's rig. He comes out, and here's the Secret Service, by the way. We're in a boat circling the rig at all. The Secret Service on the boat, Secret Service on the helicopter. So anyway, the president gets out and comes over, and my dad said, "Welcome, Mr. President. Love to have you here." And here's the chairman of Gulf Oil, and they introduced each other and said, "We got some good lunch for you." So anyway, they went down. Of course, the president, the rig was just couldn't believe here's the president of the United States on a drilling rig 100 miles out in the Gulf. But he had a great time, and he sent my dad a board with all the letter and information. I got it upstairs when he came out to the rig. But first time in the history of the United States that a president been offshore eating Cajun food.
Ed, tell me about your parents and what your dad's work ethic was and how he put you to work pretty early, didn't he?
Yeah, and you can't ever thank your parents, mom and dad, for doing things that made you a better person. The one thing my dad did that I really appreciated, that probably helped me through later life, was he sent me to Eunice, Louisiana, to work on a place where they had these oil barrels and oil tanks. I learned how to drive big trucks. I learned how to associate with the biggest thing you learn is association with different people. Over a period of time, I got invited over to their houses for gumbo or whatever else they cooked, and it was quite an honor. And it was kind of the foundation for me to learn how to run a business and how to appreciate and thank people for what they do for you.
So I heard that your mother was one of the first law graduates at UT?
South Texas College of Law. I think
Wow.
that's where she went.
Okay.
She went to several schools.
Okay. And her first job, or what was her main career? What did she do in her main career?
Well, she's a very smart woman. She graduated, I think, number 2 or 3 in her law school at South Texas. And she was recruited, or how she got the job, I'll never know. But her first job was working for a guy named Silver Dollar Jim West here in Houston at West Properties and West Production. And what a story that she has to tell about people. Jim West had all his cars painted West Production blue, and they'd send that Cadillac or whatever it was with whip aerials all over to pick her up in the morning to bring her to work. And that's some of the stories she loved to tell about working for a guy named Silver Dollar Jim West. I mean, the people who know who Silver Dollar Jim West was, that threw silver dollars away to everybody and kept a whole vault full of them. And everybody that saw him coming would stand in line waiting for silver dollars. My mother enjoyed working for him for a long time till my dad came along and said, well, let's either work for West or come home and have children with me. So obviously she made the right decision. Edgar Bryan was from Orange, Texas, and he loved coming to the rodeo, and he loved buying the chickens. And he bought the Grand Champion chicken. I can't remember how much it was, but he came up and had a picture made with him. I was chairman of the chicken committee then. And he was a nice guy. And he said, come on down to visit me in Orange sometime. I never did. But he loved the rodeo. The chicken committee had a lot of people. It was really a place that everybody wanted to be on rodeo day when the chicken committee had their sale. And the Reba twins from Rice University came out and sang a song for us, introduced themselves to the rodeo, and then they just had a good time out there. The chicken committee back in its prime, everybody wanted to be involved with the chicken committee. It was the best committee at the rodeo. It had more people supporting it. You know, everybody was just loved the chicken committee.
So when you were having a lot of fun on that chicken committee, was there a song you'd sing?
Yeah, there was one. We'd always introduce our skit with, there's no chicken like a no chicken like no chicken we know. Everything about it is palatable. Everything about it we know. Somewhere is it either tealing like the note somehow. So there's no chicken like a show chicken. No show chicken I know.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you.